Glasgow was the murder capital of the UK now.
He was stabbed 40 times during a frenzy.
It is basically a very violent place.
It's worse in New York and London.
A man who killed his victim with a samurai sword.
A man stabbed in the stomach.
Plagued by a knife-carrying culture, over 1,000 stabbings a year, 81 murders in 2003, Glasgow is one of Britain's toughest towns. Once described as the Chicago of Europe because of its organised crime and gangland slayings, Glasgow has maintained its reputation as one of Britain's most violent cities.
Most people carry a knife nowadays. Heard of people getting killed. Know somebody that's been killed.
In 2003, there were a total of 81 murders throughout the city, giving it a higher murder rate per capita than both Belfast and London. What makes Glasgow so different from other cities is the high proportion of murders that involve the use of knives.
Glasgow is unique compared to the rest of what I would call the civilised world. On average, we see roughly 2 to 3 knife injuries a day.
In this programme, we will look at how a territorial and knife-carrying culture contributes to Glasgow's high murder rate.
Glasgow's always had a problem with knives.
An inch lower, I could have been dead.
We spend the night with the people who see the carnage up close.
It transpires he's been stabbed in the chest, just to the right of the breastbone.
And look at what makes Glasgow the murder capital of Western Europe.
Well, Glasgow's two sides to it, doesn't it? If you drive into the city, you'll see it's regenerating along the banks of the Clyde. If you step out into the housing estates, there's a trend of binge drinking, knife carrying, a willingness to use that knife.
Crime reporter Alex Robertson has been covering Glasgow's violent crimes for 6 years. This has led him to most areas around the city.
The south side of the city doesn't experience the problems the other areas do. This killing of this teenager, Thomas Loughley, he was quite simply an innocent bystander who witnessed a fight between another teenager and his girlfriend. He tried to intervene and was stabbed to death. East End's actually got the highest rate of violent crime in the Forth area. In one weekend alone in the East End there was 4 murders. On my right is the Sheeling Bar. Gordon Ross, 36-year-old, drinking on a Tuesday night and slain outside. Police launched a murder investigation which as yet is still open. We're now in Pollokshields where 15-year-old Chris Donald, he was abducted and he was found dead the following day. This was a schoolboy.
Much of Glasgow's blade problem is put down to a subculture of young gangs. The members often referred to as Neds, or non-educated delinquents.
Glasgow's Neds have a reasonably famous reputation.
The Ned in Glasgow parlance tends to be the track-suited, violent, abusive young man from outlying housing estates.
He hangs around in street corners and is more often or not involved in violence or, shoplifting.
He is prepared to get high on drink and or drugs at the weekend and go looking for a fight.
Territorialism amongst Neds is widespread across Glasgow. There are over 200 individually named gangs across the city, separated by the margins of their housing schemes. The majority are not involved in any organised criminal activity, except acts of violence.
Well, if I go in a Friday night or Saturday night and taste this like tea, they'll stab you or bottle you, whatever. Because they've had drink in them or their drugs, they just go mental and start attacking you.
Springburn in North Glasgow is a typical area where territorialism among youths can lead to running battles. We tracked down members from 2 local gangs. Both insisted on withholding their identities through fear of retribution. Their voices have been distorted.
When you're young in it and you're daft, You want a gang, you want to like this, you need to like that. Fight with people. Happens here every weekend nearly. Here and a new person gets stabbed.
Most youngsters in Glasgow are carrying nice lockbacks. That's about it. Lockbacks or else just bottling people. Just smash them in the face with a bottle.
I think in certain schemes in certain parts of the city, a lot of young people will look up to the local hard man, the local gangster, and almost aspire to be as tough as him.
It's fighting all the time. Hundreds of fighting. Getting drunk, getting mad at it. It's causing trouble.
They'll get you in a gang, they'll just all charge at you and do you in. If they don't get you with a bottle or the knife.
But, you know, a large culture at that age of alcoholism, and with alcohol problems, violence often ensues, and if they're carrying knives, and that's the thing they'll often resort to using, you know.
No, when people get a drink, it's false courage. Think they're this and that, and then do stupid things to people that don't really deserve it.
Stabbings do not just involve gang members. Innocent people also get caught up in the violence. This is something that 19-year-old accountancy student Christopher Begley found out in September 2003.
You hear about knife attacks happening all the time in Glasgow. It is quite commonplace nowadays, but you never imagine it's going to happen to yourself. I'd been for a few drinks with a few friends. I mean, probably only talking in the pub for maybe 2 hours tops, so it's not as if we were drunk. I walked one of my friends home, turned round to go back towards home, got talking to a couple of boys that I knew from school. Another guy, one of their friends, I only know who he is because he used to work with somebody that I know. He was probably the drunkest out of the lot, and I think he'd probably been taking something as well by the state of his eyes, pupils dilated and whatever. Out of nowhere, no argument, no conflict, nothing, he's just lunged at me. Initially, I thought I'd been punched, so I took a step back thinking I'm going to get a hiding off for 3 boys here. As soon as I seen the blood in my jacket, I realised it was a knife or something had been slashed. He cut me from just behind my ear, right down under my jawline to just under my chin. It's about a 7 or 8 inch scar. I got 6 stitches at the deepest part, and the rest was about butterflies. There's 25 butterfly stitches to seal up the rest. Luckily, it wasn't too deep.
Christopher's attacker was arrested within hours, but as in many other such cases, the witnesses refused to give evidence.
I was definitely lucky with it because, for a start, I'm still here talking about it. An inch lower, I could have been dead.
1 minute, this man was out walking his dog. The next, he's lying in his own blood.
Glasgow's hospitals have long been in the media spotlight, highlighting the problems of everyday casual violence.
To the patient, the attack is little more than a fact of everyday life.
Usual attack on life.
Many knife attacks go unreported. In 2003, the police recorded 404 knife incidents. But Glasgow Royal Infirmary alone treated over 1,000 stabbings in the same year.
On average, we see roughly 2 to 3 knife injuries a day, and on average 2 to 3 a week will be serious or life-threatening. 3 weeks ago, in one weekend, we had 2 homicides. In my experience, Glasgow is unique compared to the rest of what I would call the civilised world in terms of the scale and the severity of the knife injuries that we see.
It's Saturday night, and for many in Glasgow, that means a big night ahead. Statistics show that 37% of stabbings occur at the weekend, making it twice as likely to be killed on the streets of Glasgow on a Friday or Saturday night. At the Scottish Ambulance Depot in central Glasgow, paramedic Ray Hanna prepares for a night on the town.
Well, mentally you can expect the whole spectrum of assaults, from the relatively minor to the really quite serious. From that I mean someone just punched in the nose with a broken nose, to someone has a knife stuck into his chest.
An hour into the shift, Ray gets his first call out to an assault.
For a 39-year-old male being stabbed, possibly through the lungs.
With the police already at the scene, technician Lynn MacDonald is first to treat the injured man.
Hiya. Hiya. Hiya, pal. Right, I need to have a wee look at your chest, okay? Get a stab wound right in the centre.
The man has been stabbed in the chest during a street fight, but has managed to crawl back to his flat.
Did you see what kind of weapon they used? How big was the blade? Any ideas? I know it was sort of, kind of fast happening.
As well as being stabbed, the victim has also been hit several times on the head with a crowbar.
Chair's right behind you. So you've been stabbed with a knife, hit over the head with an iron bar. You've not been unconscious. Apart from that, you're fine. Yeah, good.
On the way to hospital, Ray tries to ascertain how far the knife has penetrated.
So tell me again about this knife. Did you catch a glimpse of it? A what knife? It transpires he's been stabbed in the chest, just to the right of the breastbone, stabbed in the right side. What he described as a potato knife, a wooden handle, 3-inch blade maybe, and hit about the head several times, at least 20 times he says, but that'll be another statistic for him tonight, I think. Serious stabbing.
The type of injuries we see vary from very innocent looking wounds to very graphic, massive, large open wounds depending on the weapons used, from knives, from machetes, up to and including bayonets and swords. Well, this patient's been stabbed in the neck. You can see the knife is a kitchen knife sticking into the notch just at the bottom of the neck where the windpipe is. This man was hit in the back of the head with a machete, and it sliced through the back of the skull there, and you can see the bones being lifted off the outer table of the skull. We see machete wounds like this on a regular basis. We certainly see machete wounds every week.
Glasgow's ambulance service continues to patch up the casualties of drink-fueled violence.
Well, it's a report of a 33-year-old male with a head injury, bleeding badly. It could be an assault, it could be absolutely anything.
In the majority of call-outs, alcohol is a contributing factor. During their shift, Ray and Lynn assist 3 serious assaults.
Middle-aged lady's been assaulted. That's all we really know at the moment.
And several other alcohol-related injuries. Towards the end of the night, yet another stab victim arrives. This time, the weapon in question is a sword.
But he seems to have a knife wound to his back and several wounds to his scalp, partly inflicted by a sword.
Right, let's get you in and we'll get you sorted.
For Glasgow's medical teams, it's business as usual.
Violence has been their method, a violence which has earned Glasgow the reputation as the toughest city in Britain.
The strong presence of gangs in Glasgow has been apparent throughout the last century, creating an image that would survive for decades. Blades have always been a popular tool in Glasgow's underworld, but it was the cutthroat razor that was the most popular in the past.
In the bad old days in Glasgow, you tended to hear a lot about the Glasgow smile, which was created by a couple of razor slashes just like that, widening the mouth, showing a lot more teeth and leaving the person disfigured, but very much with a distorted smile.
Today, knives are used instead of razors. But the weapon of choice isn't the only thing that's changed. The motive for violence appears to be different.
There's simply a new breed of criminal around. In the bad old days, you had some interesting godfathers and people who concentrated in bank robbery, and now the streets seem to be awash with what are simply just young, greedy Neds who are prepared to cause trouble just simply for killing.
Running battles between some of Glasgow's 200 gangs often leads to serious injury and even death. But the territorial nature of Neds is not always just aimed at other gangs. Attacks on innocent members of the public venturing down the wrong street can occur. Pollock in West Glasgow was the scene of one such motiveless attack in the year 2000.
Because they were bored, wanted a bit of fun. John was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
25-year-old John Davidson became the victim of a group of youths who considered him to be on their territory.
John was walking down the Leafland Road and a couple of them had said, "What are you looking at?" And John came running round the corner. As he came round the corner, some of them came running out the laying and John's, it was a nice night and John's shoe had come off and he fell down and they just beat him and stabbed him all the time in the back. They left John lying right down there to die. They left him to die.
2 young men were later convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment.
I hated the headlines. Wrong place at the wrong time. It should be able to walk in the place he was brought up in. That man there, he was in a court and turned round when he got his sentence and realised that none of his pals were there and gave my sister the finger. Stuck his finger up at my sister. Oh, angry, I'd love to kill them. I'd love to decapitate them, so I would. And shove their head right up their arse.
At Govan Police Station, they're preparing to go out and tackle the problem of violent crimes committed by youths. Chief Inspector Eddie Smith briefs the task force.
Objectives as normal, to engage with and communicate with the young people as well and detect and deal effectively with young offenders. Well, the body armour came about because of the sad death of a serving police officer some years ago, and as a consequence of that, the force invested a great deal of technology and a great deal of money in ensuring that our officers were protected.
One of the problems we have in this particular subdivision is the knife culture, and I would say amongst the hardcore, the carrying of knives is a real big issue, because it's not just the carrying of knives, it's what it can lead to.
I've seen stabbings, people getting downs, put away in an ambulance. Heard of people getting killed. Know somebody that's been killed.
A call comes through of a disturbance involving youths in a nearby housing estate.
On arrival, we noticed quite a few youth standing close here. They were all searched. They were searched primarily, they consented to search, and we're searching them for offensive weapons and any. It's not unknown for 12 and 14-year-olds to have cannabis on them as well in this area. So it's basically searching for drugs and offensive weapons.
What we've tried to do this summer, rather than go out and just enforce the legislation as it stands, is try and speak to young people and explain to them the impact it's having, and actually engage with them as individuals and human beings.
The police have got an attitude. They think you're standing at a corner, they think they're better than you, so move on, and they move you into trouble. Or if you went into a different area, you probably just get attacked.
You're in the gang for protect each other. Somebody else is going into somebody else's territory, they're going to have a knife or something on them for protection.
Strathclyde police have been targeting knife crime with many campaigns over the years. Their most recent being Operation Magnet.
We searched over 2,500 people in a 6-month period and recovered over 200 weapons. That's like a 1 in 10 hit. We've had a full range of weapons from razor blades, machetes, axes, pickaxe handles, you name it, we've recovered it.
Despite the huge success of such campaigns, keeping knives off the streets of Glasgow is an uphill struggle. Shop owner Martin Morris is very aware of Glasgow's knife-carrying culture and is happy to, quite legally, capitalise on it.
For some reason, a lot of people think it's perhaps quite macho to carry a knife.
Morris sells a variety of electrical and musical equipment, but also stocks goods that he describes as novelty items. This includes replica machine guns, swords of various description, and a huge range of knives.
Well, we sell probably in the region of 20 to 30 knives a week. This is a small selection of what we carry.
This is what's described as a lock knife.
Called a lock knife simply because you open it and it locks.
My most preferred knife would be a wee one, a wee lockback.
Main knives that are being used are lockbacks, everybody uses them now.
The idea being that if it's used at all, the blade doesn't bend.
You'd use that for almost any purpose, household, opening parcels.
This is a hunting knife.
They're quite often described as fantasy knives, and it's got the ornate decoration on it.
There is no place for this on the streets of any town. One of the more extreme finds we've had are machetes. These tend to be concealed down the trouser leg.
What is often referred as a samurai sword, this one is particularly ornate.
Probably more used to scare people off, waving about in the air.
If I were to do that, I could probably cut myself.
In Operation Magnet, they recovered 200 weapons in 6 months. In the same period, Martin Morris's shop sold nearly 500. When one considers that knives are available from many types of shop, the scale of the problem becomes clear.
The second most popular knife that we recovered was a kitchen knife, found obviously in any kitchen in the country, readily accessible and quite clearly very dangerous.
I can guarantee B&Q sell more on a Saturday morning than we do. They sell more in one morning than we probably do in 1 month. I'm certainly not ashamed of anything that we sell. I must point out I don't sell weapons, I sell knives. A knife is only a weapon if used in an aggressive and offensive manner.
Of all the murders that happen in the city, over half are committed with the use of a knife. The casualties of Glasgow's blade-carrying culture continue to mount.
The murders, the stabbings, the serious assaults, gang fights, Glasgow has a real problem that must be solved.
I think it'll get worse before it gets better.
It'll not be just be knives, they'll go into bigger stuff, guns.
Violence is ingrained in the communities, and it's part and parcel of their everyday lives. And until we can change that, then we will not see an end to the problem.
Glasgow may not always be the murder capital of Western Europe, but it will remain one of Britain's toughest towns.
Punishment squads have smashed bones with baseball bats.
I hear my bones cracking.
Recovering in a Belfast hospital after the horrific attack in the city.
They're hoods with guns.
Muggers are informed against and shot.
One of Britain's longest-running conflicts. Paramilitary groups serving out rough justice. Thousands of punishment shootings and beatings. Belfast is one of Britain's toughest towns. Belfast is unique amongst British cities in having paramilitary punishment squads that hand out summary justice. According to police statistics, between 1973 and 2004, there have been over 3,000 punishment shootings and over 2,000 beatings. There are as many attacks happening today as there were in pre-ceasefire Belfast over 10 years ago. In this programme, we will look at the phenomenon of the punishment attack.
It's not a smack on the back of the hand, it's shots in the legs.
And we meet the people who've been on the punishment squad's hit list.
My kneecap was blue in half. AK-47.
If you're caught, you keep your mouth shut and take a beating.
Belfast has witnessed over 30 years of violence between Catholic Republican and Protestant loyalist paramilitaries, making the city notorious not just in the UK, but the whole world.
When we had an explosion of violence, the fabric of society begins to rock.
Punishment-style beatings and shootings have been part of life in Belfast since the outbreak of the Troubles immersed the city in violence in the late 60s. The 1994 ceasefire saw an end to the tit-for-tat sectarian killing. The ceasefire did not, however, bring an end to the punishment beatings. Belfast's ambulance service witnessed some of the most brutal and calculated violence in Britain. Paramedic Terry Gorman has been working in Belfast for 17 years.
Quite often you don't know what you're going to find until you get there. I remember one of my very, very early incidents where I went out to a shooting and I jumped out of the ambulance only to find that we had 3 further ones lying side by side. A nice wee row had all been kneecapped.
shot in each knee and shot in each ankle and shot in each wrist. It was something that I wasn't prepared for in the training school, but it's something that you learn from. I remember responding to a call in this area. It was mid-afternoon, 3 o'clock or so. Both people, as far as I can recall, had sustained lower limb fractures, quite nasty, horrific injuries. And kids had quite obviously seen the victims. It was quite possible that they had also seen the attacks being carried out. It was diabolical. It was a very sad indictment of the people of Belfast.
The back alleys of Belfast are often the place where punishment attacks are dealt out. Community worker Brendan Bradley agreed to show us around an area of North Belfast where friction between paramilitaries and local youths is high.
FTRA means fuck the RA, fuck the RA. That's what your drug dealing fuck. I suppose that means that anybody who wants to do a bit of drug dealing can go ahead and deal it, because the young people around here believe it's the right thing to do.
As we are filming, Brendan sees some youths vandalising a fence in the deserted estate of Torrens.
What is that? That's in my way.
The boys start to hide
What is
their
that?
faces and ask
What are you
not
doing?
to be
Look.
filmed. They claim to be
What
helping
are you
local
doing?
builders.
Why isn't that at school?
Put that camera there.
You the boys set the houses on fire?
People asked us yesterday if they take them off for them, just to get them off, get them all off, to make less work.
Well, if they're into helping, that there's good, but we beg to differ. They're pulling off the wood to bundle it up, throw it into the house and set it on fire.
The nervousness of the boys is understandable. Nearby is a place favoured by paramilitaries for carrying out punishment attacks.
This alleyway here is synonymous with punishment beatings and kneecappings. It's commonly known as the kneecapping alley because of the many people that's been punished here. Neighbours said when some of the beatings were going on, they heard the people being beat, and basically they couldn't respond. Obviously, the self-preservation was one of the things that they thought about.
One punishment victim that came to know Kneecap Alley was ex-offender Jimmy.
I had no job. There was no jobs about. That's where it started. I was doing robberies, doing various other things. They were just money makers.
As Jimmy became known for robbing post offices, the local paramilitaries began to take notice.
There was a lot of robberies going on around the district. My name was put amongst them names. This fella come up to me, says, "Jamie, there's a girl that wants you outside." It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life when I got to the top of the stairs.
Jimmy was severely beaten. But his ordeal was far from over.
They only took me 200 yards away, around beside a local school. Said a couple of times and told me to kneel down. It was just around this area where they had me down. They put their guns at the back of my legs and then shot me. And then they shot me that leg. It was freezing. They left me lying for about a half an hour before an ambulance came. I thought I was going to die. My kneecap was blew in half on my right leg. I had a broken femur on my right leg. I had a shattered shin on my right leg. On my left leg, my kneecap was shattered. All the arteries and tendons severed in my left leg. I mean, that's when I was only 18. Like.
The infamous kneecapping is a classic form of paramilitary punishment. But the range of punitive measures can be diverse. For first-time offenders, public humiliation can be used, such as being tied up and covered with tar and feathers. It can also be as simple as having to advertise one's crimes in the high street. For more serious offences, injuries will be inflicted with carefully aimed gunshots. Or in the case of beatings, more barbaric methods will be used. The punishment will often be worse for repeat offenders. 3 years after being beaten and kneecapped, the paramilitaries had reason to visit Jimmy once again.
Got myself in a whole new different kind of crime, which is selling drugs. They've been looking for me for a while. I managed to evade them a couple of times, but I was tucked away in the car. It was not clean out.
I would say I would have been more or less unconscious, but in my mind I could hear and feel everything that was going on. I mean, I felt all the blows I was taking. I heard everything going on around me. I could hear my bones cracking. I still remember them all laughing like animals. Bottom half of my leg was mangled, fractured skull. My arm was mangled, ribs. I'm led to believe it, a pickaxe put through my leg, bait senseless. They said it was for selling drugs. Regardless of whether I was selling drugs or not, I still don't give them a right to bait me. I'm sure it's life.
Although the nature of punishment attacks seems barbaric to a civilised society, the call for such actions come from the communities themselves. Complaints from residents will be passed on to representatives of paramilitary groups who will then investigate the individuals concerned.
Mondays are terrible days for paramilitarists because that's the day after the weekend, and there's usually a queue of elements of the community demanding that this person or that person be dealt with.
The heavily fortified police stations in Belfast reflect the police force's vulnerability in the past. The authorities today are still treated with a level of contempt and distrust.
The police, it would seem to me, do not do the small things well. This is the first question I ask the little old lady who comes to my constituency office is, have you phoned the police? Yes, I phoned the police and they didn't respond until 4 hours later.
The lack of a fully accepted police force is what allows paramilitaries to gain support from communities and still maintain a role in society today.
Our local people who know their own communities so well that they actually can blend into it so easily and can actually have people who want them to do this.
The paramilitarists do not trawl the street looking for people to punishment beat. All of the paramilitarists, no matter which colour they may be, have always indicated that they were the defender of the people.
Although paramilitaries are seen as the enforcers of law and order in certain parts of Belfast, the police, of course, do not accept their self-appointed position.
By using the term punishment beatings, I think there is that suggestion that somebody has presided over a case where there has been some form of due process and somebody has been found guilty on the basis of evidence. That's simply not what happens.
Prosecution for punishment activity is extremely rare. Of the 1,200 punishment attacks made in the last 5 years, less than 2% led to arrests.
The victims of those attacks are very much living in fear. I can remember going to the scenes of a paramilitary attack on a young boy, but as police arrived at that scene, that young boy was screaming for us to go away. And it was clearly because if he was seen to cooperate with the police in any way, that there could be further retribution.
Paramilitary groups in Belfast have been carrying out punishment attacks for over 30 years, either to keep discipline within their ranks or through public pressure to reduce antisocial behaviour. In Belfast today, at the top of the punishment squad's hit list are Joyriders.
Joyriders annoy and upset and torment the whole community because of the noise, the screeching brakes. Very, very many people in the community can't sleep.
The city has a huge problem with car theft, but mostly it's not for profit, it's for fun.
Vauxhalls, built by robots, driven by Joyriders.
We tracked down one ex-Joyrider who agreed to talk to us about the conflict with the paramilitaries. He asked to remain anonymous.
This place here would be my old hunting ground. It was a bit of a rally course. You rammed the gates with a stolen car, flew in and showed off. What makes people do it is lack of things to do in the community, boredom. It's like a sport. The Joyrider gets a buzz. The police drive big 4x4 jeeps. They can't take bends at 50, 60 mile an hour, so you know you're making a mockery out of the police. When you're taking a chase by the police, you're getting respect from your friends. Well, respect's everything.
The biggest demand for punishment beatings would be in relation to joyriding. Many people are afraid of Joyriders knocking down their children, as has happened in West Belfast. Children have been killed.
In 2002, Jim McComb lost his daughter, Debbie, to a reckless joyrider. Ever since, he's been battling to increase sentencing for joyriders that kill.
They're killing them, they're taking limbs off, they're hurting people. The judges got the power in their hands to hand that 10-year sentence out 15 years ago, and they're not using it. I shouldn't have to go to paramilitaries.
The number one enemy would be the paramilitaries, because they would also get a lot of complaints about joyriders. I've seen people getting their legs broke with baseball bats, getting shot, tortured, guns put to their heads, let on they were getting shot so they could give information about other joyriders.
Pressure on local paramilitaries in one area of South Belfast brought about one of the most shocking punishment beatings in recent times. Convicted car thief Harry McCartan from West Belfast had been punished with broken ankles in the past by Republican paramilitaries. Having recovered from his injuries, he was thought to be active in a loyalist area in the south. Here the repercussions would be far worse. Crime reporter Henry MacDonald covered the story.
It's clear that the paramilitaries got complaints from local people living in this area. The UDA, they waited, they caught Harry McCartan, but rather than do anything to him in such a public, large road where there may be police patrols, they took him to a quieter place. He was dragged down this road here to this very spot. It doesn't look very significant, but in fact this is where Harry McCartan was effectively crucified. When we arrived here after he was taken away in an ambulance, there was blood stains all over the wood. It was quite obvious what had happened.
Such was the ferocity of the attack that instead of just being another statistic, it made national headlines.
He was taken to hospital with the nails and wood still attached to his hands. It took surgeons 5 hours to remove them.
The loyalist paramilitaries want to send out a message to other joyriders in the west of the city, which was, don't come into this estate to steal cars. Come in at your peril.
The message was meant to be clear, but the victim himself remained defiant.
I don't know what I did wrong, but what I done wasn't right.
Despite the horrific injuries, feelings for the punished joyrider in the community were mixed.
Many people in the nationalist community would have little sympathy for Harry McCartan. Count himself lucky that the nails were driven through his hands rather than his head.
I knew Harry McCartan, and he didn't deserve what happened to him. Who in the right mind agrees when nailing somebody to a fence? I don't agree with it when they nail Jesus to a cross.
For Jim McComb, it's a dilemma whether or not the punishment was deserved.
I don't believe the punishment Bateman's got. I don't believe it. Actually, I don't. But maybe it stopped him from killing an innocent person that night. So that's the way it is.
The level of paramilitary activity varies across Belfast depending on the area's relationship with the police. The Ardoyne in North Belfast is one area where trust in the police is so low that paramilitary activity is very high.
Once a police service has the trust and the backing of a local community, the role of the paramilitary tends to decrease. At the moment, in many nationalist areas, including this one, there is not an agreed trust and an agreed mechanism to engage with the police. And so the paramilitary still would be, in the view of many, many people, the custodians of order.
In the past, paramilitaries have been seen as men of honour within communities. But recently in the Ardoyne, support of their actions has been questioned.
This is like mob rule, gangsters, mafia. They're hoods with guns.
Angela Cairns' son Barney received an extremely harsh punishment for a relatively minor offence.
Barney was standing down the street with a can of beer in his hand, and this guy approached him, said to Barney, move on. And Barney says, oh, why would I move on? I'm only standing here having a can of beer. He got Barney by the neck, gripped my Barney by the throat, and Barney lashed out and smacked him one on the face. And he said to him, right, Cairns, you'll see what will happen to you. 2 to 3 weeks later, my son was tucked away by them. 9 of them. 9 of them. And they were taunting Barney even in the house before they shot him. Barney, it's your birthday. Come on out to play, Barney. And then they took my son away and shot my son down here at the back of me where I live. And they made sure that they destroyed my child's legs.
The victims of punishment attacks can be left with not only severe physical injury, but also mental images that never fade.
The scars do heal, but I have a lot of memories locked away in my head which will never go away.
Sometimes you're afraid to sleep at night. You're always checking the windows, locking doors, and you've always got an escape route. The first thing you do when you walk into a house is you plan your escape route. That's the way you have to live here.
A year after his punishment beating, Barney's friend, Anthony O'Neill, committed suicide, having also received a beating from the local paramilitaries. Barney went to the funeral.
I feel very involved for the reason that I had preached at the funeral that morning, and I had a feeling in my bones that there's going to be something else that's going to happen here. And I did something on the spur of the moment. I asked any young person in the church who had a mobile phone with them to take it out and to put my mobile number into their phone. If there's ever a moment when you feel there's nobody else I can contact, here's one number. And yet within a few hours of preaching in that vein of hope, help, I get a phone call to say there's somebody hanging from the scaffolding. On the 14th of February, this was completely covered in scaffolding. I had to climb the tower with my colleague, Father Gary, because we heard that somebody was up there, and we went up. He was too far out to actually touch him for fear he would fall off the piece of scaffolding. But we gave him the last rites from where we were. So I climbed all the way down the scaffolding again because a huge crowd had gathered at the base of the church here. And I'll always remember that the first person I met was this man. He stepped forward and he said to me, "You've just come down from the scaffolding. What was the young man wearing?" And I told him it was jeans and a striped shirt. He said, "That's my son, Barney."
Many suicides have been attributed to paramilitary activity in recent years. Barney's was the 11th suicide by a young person in Ardoyne since the new year. It was February.
They murdered my son. They might as well have took Barney up there. They might as well have put a bullet in his head.
When you punish by violence, you end up either breaking a person, as we've seen in the case of suicide, or making them more determined than ever to go on and just show how bad they can get.
I myself have lifted patients off the streets where they have visible tattoos, and these tattoos say "shoot here" with an arrow pointing towards the kneecap.
Getting a punishment beating doesn't prevent joyriding at all. It just makes people more bitter and angrier.
Until the police service in Belfast is completely accepted by communities, the paramilitaries will still be looked upon to punish unruly youths. Having fully reformed from any criminal activity, Jimmy now volunteers for a local community centre, helping young people avoid trouble.
The best thing to do with any young person is just listen to them. Let them have their say. I never got the chance to talk to anybody. That's just what they're closing, beat and shot.
Support for paramilitaries is what will keep summary justice a reality in Belfast for years to come. A recent television poll in Northern Ireland found that 65% of respondents felt that punishment attacks did work.
If people say to the paramilitaries, "Please, the time has come when we don't want anything else from you," then the paramilitaries will not be able to function. They may regroup for another purpose, but they will not be the defenders of the community.
Until that time comes, Belfast will keep its reputation as one of Britain's toughest towns.
Pompey fans have topped a new Premiership League of Shame. You fucking let him order! Police investigating football violence have arrested 5 men from Portsmouth.
Caught on CCTV throwing stones at officers.
Fucking scummers! You can see we walk through unopposed through their city.
Top of the league for arrests at football matches. One of the most notorious football firms in Britain and the country's youngest hooligan. Portsmouth is one of Britain's toughest towns. The historic naval city of Portsmouth, the most densely populated city in Britain. Home to 180,000 people who are crammed into row upon row of terraced houses on an island just 15 miles square. With a rich history of naval conflict and its dockyard roots, the people of Portsmouth are fiercely proud of their island.
I think the fact is that Pompey, Portsmouth, has been spoiling for a fight since the 15th century. We're talking about a city that grew up around a dockyard. You're talking about a city that's been dedicated to the export of serious violence.
In the 1930s, Portsmouth had the most productive dockyard industry in Britain. It was a breeding ground for proud, tough working-class men. The success of the dockyards were mirrored by the achievements of the city's football team, which won the old First Division title and the FA Cup before the Second World War.
People are very, very proud. You're always looking for a way of expressing that pride, and the best way of expressing it is to back the football team. And that's why the away support and the home support is phenomenal.
By the late 70s, the dockyards were in decline, and the once successful football team was languishing in the Third Division. But the support for the club was still strong, and a hardcore group of fans developed into one of the most feared football hooligan firms in Britain.
We're still football fans, but we've got another side to us. If someone starts on you, then first of all you're going to defend yourself, and that's what we did.
In this programme, we follow Portsmouth's notorious hooligan firm at the biggest game of the season.
I would imagine we'll get this all the way to the ground now. See whether they make a show or not.
And we look at the emergence of a new wave of younger hooligans following the club.
You don't have to be the oldest person, as long as you know that when you're running in, you've got your mates behind you running in with you, it don't matter.
Portsmouth is the only city in Britain on an island of its own. Its residents have developed a strong community spirit and an island mentality that means that they are very wary of outsiders.
These are people who have a deep-seated hostility to anyone who's foreign. That's not just the French, that's people from Havant, and Havant is 7 miles away.
Nowhere is hostility shown to outsiders more openly than at football. Since the late 70s, Portsmouth has had a large number of hardcore supporters that have caused havoc on away trips and made their home ground of Fratton Park the most intimidating ground in Britain. Eddie Crispin was a member of the hardcore group of fans that became known as the 657 crew.
We started going as a group sort of when we left school in the late 70s. And then Purcell brought out the cheap rail travel. So everyone started going on the trains, I think about 82, 83, something like that.
But this is Portsmouth and Southsea Station. This is the meeting point for away game trips 20 years ago, at the height of the 657.
Rob Sylvester was another member of the original 657 crew.
Obviously the name, the 657, comes from, that was the first train you could get to London, or the earliest train you could get to London, so you could carry on the journey up north to do what you've got to do up there.
Occasionally you could have 3 or 4 rows with different firms at an away game. You'd pull up in London in the morning, bump into someone, pull up where you're going, bump into someone, back in London at night, and then back at Waterloo you might bump into Millwall or something later at night. So we played Newcastle away and came straight off the station and went straight into these 2 pubs, and it just kicked off straight away. On the way back, we were on the train, we were talking away, and suddenly the train pulled in at Doncaster. Everyone, here they are. Looked out the window, and the whole of the platform was full up with Chelsea. Straight off the train, straight into them, run them off the station. That was a bit of a mad day.
They became so notorious for causing trouble, they were banned from most football stadiums in the country. So the crew had to come up with innovative ways to get into the heavily policed away grounds.
We went to Cardiff once, and we knew the police would be waiting at the station, so what we did, we had some wedding invitations made up, and everyone went in blazers and trousers and a shirt and tie.
All Farrow slacks and blazers and aqua scoot and ties.
When the police pulled them at Cardiff, so you guys going to football, do we look like we're going to football?
you know? We're here for a wedding, mate, you know? Oh, sorry, lads, carry on.
Took them a couple of minutes, they sort of sussed out that we weren't there for the wedding.
Before they realised they were letting the 657 crew slip through their grass, you know?
That's them in the ground. Typical Pompey, that going to places and, you know, you knew that there was a fair chance you would sort of get your nose smashed in, but that was the buzz about it, you know.
The 657 were able to establish themselves as one of the top 5 hooligan firms in the country, thanks to their liberal attitude towards violence.
Football violence is bad, but, you know, where does it come up on the list? You know, it's not as bad as terrorism, drug dealing, you know, see, there's a lot worse things than being a football violence. You know, I know who I'd rather live next door to me.
But for the 657 crew, the days of terrorist battles with rival firms are gone.
And basically, if I didn't go to football, I wouldn't have any dealings with the police at all. But every Saturday now, you go to football, you walk in a pub, you get a camera shoved in your face.
All Cedar stadiums and CCTV have meant that incidents of violence inside football grounds are now rare. But football hooliganism hasn't gone away. In recent seasons, arrests for serious football-related violence have nearly doubled. The National Criminal Intelligence Service reported the problem has been pushed away from the terraces to outside the stadium, where it is better organised and more violent. In 2004, Portsmouth FC had the worst record for football hooliganism in Britain.
Pompey fans have topped a new Premiership League of Shame. Figures out on total arrests per club show 146 Portsmouth supporters were picked up last season.
Well, it's nice to see Pompey top of one league anyway.
The reason Portsmouth topped the league table of arrests is largely down to their bitter rivalry for just one club, their South Coast neighbours, Southampton. It is believed that the bitter rivalry between the two cities dates back to the 1930s, but it started on the dockyards rather than the football terraces. The Portsmouth dockers went on strike over low pay, so the yard owners brought in merchant dockers from Southampton to break the picket lines.
The Portsmouth dockers went on strike. It's a community, it's obviously a community suffered. Now, the hardships families go through in the strikes in the old days, you know, things like that are never forgotten.
From then on, people from Southampton have been known as Scum, an acronym for the Southampton Dockers who broke the 1930s strike. Although the rivalry is fierce, over the years, the two clubs have often been in different divisions and have rarely played each other. But in 2003, Portsmouth won promotion to the Premiership and were guaranteed to meet their South Coast rivals. Southampton's visit to Fratton Park in March 2004 was their first for 20 years. Police deployed 400 officers, the most ever for a Premiership game.
We knew that it was going to be a big police operation. We knew that they'd be out there waiting for us. So it was quite a tension-charged atmosphere.
Everyone met up and they knew what time the scummers were going to arrive at Pompey. All turned out, the police turned out.
Portsmouth won the match 1-0. But the fans wanted to beat their rivals off the pitch as well.
I mean, at the end of the game, Pompey had won anyway, but there was, as in the old days, you used to get mobs waiting here, baiting the away supporters, because you could look up to them in that section of the ground there.
We were held in for about 30 minutes, then they took us up into a road and we were held in a side road for, again, about another 20 minutes probably.
And the police and the stewards, I mean, weren't holding, not as if they were holding them back, they didn't want to come out, but they were trying to disperse of the mob here, which was probably up to about 1,000 upwards.
It was clear then that something a lot more sinister was going on.
It was only the heavy police presence that ensured the Southampton supporters were escorted away safely. But the Portsmouth fans weren't finished, and they continued to throw stones and rubble at the police well into the night. It turned into the worst rioting ever at a Premiership game.
March the 21st and the streets around Fratton Park are turned into a battleground. 400 police officers are deployed, a tenth of the force.
The police used high-tech video evidence to identify the rioters, and 3 months after the game, they'd arrested 93 people and given out 70 banning orders. Portsmouth's hooligan following was blamed for the riots, but it wasn't the older 657 crew throwing stones and bricks at the police. Most of the rioters arrested were under 25. They included two of the youngest ever to be convicted of football hooliganism, a girl of 14 and a boy of 10.
This game probably go down to be the biggest nicking of one game ever. I mean, by the time he finished, they'd probably have about 100 banged up.
Out of the 93 people arrested, nearly half were from a firm made up of a new generation of Portsmouth football hooligans. We meet them in part 2.
The thing is with football, because there's so many of you, you ain't got to be hard, you just got to be arsed to go in.
And we're with the 657 crew as Portsmouth play Southampton for the first time since the riots. Portsmouth's dockyards gave rise to tough working-class men who had a love of football and a unique pride in their city. Their bitter rivalry with Southampton started on the dockyards in the 1930s and soon transferred onto the football terraces. There have been outbreaks of violence at every game since. But in March 2004, the rivalry escalated into a full-blown riot on the streets of Portsmouth. The rioting was blamed on Portsmouth's hooligan following, but most of those arrested were under 25, highlighting a new wave of young hooligan that follows the club.
Up and down the country, every club that used to have an active firm or still considered has got an active firm has got a youth element. Yeah, there's some jokingly say youth academy.
Portsmouth's young firm is made up of lads aged between 16 and 20. Most of them are sons of the original 657 crew.
Quite funny really, because a lot of the dads grew up together and living in the same area now, all the sons sort of the same age group, they're growing up together.
This group of young hooligans became notorious in Portsmouth after 40 of them were arrested for their involvement in the riots and were named and shamed on the front of the local newspapers.
Who's on it? It's what? I don't know, always my face there. Yeah, he got his nose, you know what I mean? That's it.
Obviously everyone wants to beat up the scummers and that, so everyone just makes the rounds. And when it do, like, the police get control of the situation or whatever, they like steam into the hustle on that, and it just went back and forth, back and forth. It just got to the extent where everyone standing still, throwing stuff at the police and that.
The thing is with football, because there's so many of you, you ain't got to be hard, you just got to be arsed to go in. That's all you got to do.
That's it.
As long as you're game, that's it. You don't have to be the hardest person, as long as you know that when you're running in, you've got your mates behind you running in with you, it don't matter.
These young fans are continuing in the tradition of the hard-hitting Portsmouth hooligans who live and breathe the club.
There was an incident not so long ago with Southampton. It involved 60 to 70 Pompey lads. Yeah. All under 18. They went on the common and big battle with Southampton's hooligan following, which consisted of hardcore blokes, and Portsmouth come out on top. So after that, all the adults had recognised that there's a new firm on the horizon.
In an effort to stop these youngsters turning into another 657 crew, the courts came down hard on them following the riots and handed out jail sentences.
They nicked me at the Tolton game. They just took me to the side and said, look, we've got you on camera throwing bricks and that. I said, yeah, fair enough. Then I decided to go to police station and I admitted to it, and then got 12-month sentence for it.
They come round about one morning about 6 o'clock, innit? Come round, they got me out of bed, took me out of the police station. I've got 10 months. People ask what you in for and they say, oh, football violence. They're like, you think you're mad in that? Because most of the people run there for like street robberies and that.
Even though they are now out of prison, all of the lads are still on tag, which puts them on a strict curfew and prevents them from going out in the evening.
How many of you got tags on? No. And when do they come off? Next Saturday, 9 o'clock. Your daughter's up, so I'll come on.
The boys were also given banning orders, preventing them from going to any football matches home and abroad. This means they have to watch the first Portsmouth-Southampton game since the March riots on television. So it's left up to the older generation to maintain Portsmouth's tough reputation at the game.
There is a bit of a special atmosphere when we play out there. And obviously everyone, because we're the better side this season, everyone's expecting us to go out there and wallop them. So hopefully we get a result on the pitch as well this season.
The police have classified the game as Category C, the highest warning they can give for potential football violence. The total cost of the police operation will be around £500,000, accounting for the 450 officers, dog handlers and horse units who are all on duty to ensure that there is no repeat of the riots. Eddie Crispin and the rest of the 657 crew allow us to follow them to the game. As usual, they meet at Fratton Station and they can't wait to get to Southampton. Where the game is given a Category C rating, the police can exercise a Section 60, a new law that allows them to stop and search potential troublemakers before they get to the game.
They abuse it at football matches, really. We went to Cardiff the other night. We had a coach load. The police inspector got on, he said, we're Section 60 and everyone on this coach. So we had to get off the coach. As we got off, they were filming. Had to give your name, date of birth and address. A couple of my mates said, Dad came to football. And he got off the coach and he had to speak into the camera and gave his date of birth as 1928. So we got the youngest football hooligan in the country and the oldest now.
Once the Portsmouth fans arrive at Southampton Central, they are in their rivals' territory. To try to prevent trouble, they are escorted to the ground by the police.
I would imagine we'll get this all the way to the ground now. See whether they make a show or not.
The 657 crew managed to walk to the ground without encountering any Southampton fans.
You can see we walked through unopposed through their city. There've been a couple of chances where they could have come in, but they haven't even shown out. This would never happen in Pompey. It's unbelievable, really. They've got nothing, Southampton, at all.
But when they get to the ground, one Southampton fan is feeling brave.
Happened too many times.
Unlike the 70s and 80s, where most of the trouble happened inside the ground, nowadays, once the fans are in the new all-seater stadiums, there is rarely any trouble. Portsmouth lose the game 2-1 in the final few minutes, ensuring a highly charged walk through Southampton town centre back to the station. As the Portsmouth fans cross the high street, there's a potential flashpoint as a group of Southampton supporters have congregated outside a pub. The heavy police presence ensures there are no outbreaks of serious violence, and the Portsmouth fans are escorted to the station and out of Southampton. Once back in Portsmouth, there's nothing else for them to do other than drown their sorrows.
Everyone's got over the defeat now, I think, but still a bit gutted. But everyone's had a good drink now and just going to get on with things.
The night may be over for the 657 crew, but for the new generation of Portsmouth fans who couldn't go to the game, the night has just begun. So far, the mood of the fans is good-natured, but the paramedics based at Portsmouth ambulance station are well aware of the trouble that losing to Southampton can cause.
It does get tense when Pompey and Southampton are playing. There's a lot of shouting and a lot of aggression. You can feel it's really highly charged. Yeah, they're quite good at the matches, but it's outside. Depending on how the result's gone, it does have an influence. Depends on whether they're happy drunk or aggressive drunk. So.
We ain't scummers! Fucking scummers!
Only 20 minutes into their 8-hour shift, and the paramedics get their first call out to a pub fight.
What are we going to?
A male who's been punched in the face. He's conscious and breathing. The police are en route. 1, 2, 3, up on your feet.
Portsmouth is living up to its tough reputation. It's only 10 o'clock and calls to fights outside pubs are coming in regularly.
Quite all right with being beaten up, are you? He's got a head injury. I think he's been assaulted. We've got a male with a stab wound. We have been told to proceed with caution. When you get like the men that are real sort of got a lot of bravado, they suddenly become real, can take on the world. Don't worry, mate, I'll get him back. And they're going to take on the whole of Portsmouth to avenge their friend who's just been beaten up.
I've got beat up by two geezers. They've done my nose, everything.
Was that the black
geezer? The black geezer, he's beating the shit out of me, the black geezer.
I'll have him. I don't give a shit about the police. I'll have him. I'm supposed to be modelling next year. I'll kill him.
By the end of the shift, there have been 15 call-outs to pub fights, 2 broken noses and 1 stab wound. This level of violence has become all too common for the paramedics.
I'd endeavour not to be at work when Southampton were playing down here. It's horrible. I'm not saying all that would stem from alcohol, to be honest. That's just pure rivalry. It's not nice.
I ain't fucking scum, you.
The days of terrorist battles with rival firms are long gone, thanks to increased security and the use of video cameras. And the courts have made it difficult for the new generation of Portsmouth hooligans to take over the 657's mantle. But with their ingrained propensity for violence, their bitter rivalry with Southampton, and pride in their city as strong as ever, Portsmouth will continue to be one of Britain's toughest towns.
You are not dealing with a bunch of football hooligans that simply go for a fight. It's part of the way they express the support, not just for the club, but for the city itself.
In its day, Pompey were there to be county, but saying that, if anyone come down there and take liberties, I don't think they had much chance, to be honest.